For those of you who follow the presidential campaign, there's probably not going to be a lot of huge surprise in these poll numbers. As you've seen in other polls, both in this state and nationally, we've seen Dr. Ben Carson move into roughly a tie with Donald Trump for a lead in Republican public opinion preference surveys. What's more interesting, and I'd argue even more important than who's running first and second, is what that second tier of Republican candidates looks like. And what's begun to happen not only in our survey, but in many others as well, is two candidates, Senator Ted Cruz of Texas and Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, have emerged from the rest of the pack as a fairly clear second-tier set of alternatives.
On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton remains the front runner. She's the choice of about half of those we surveyed. Bernie Sanders, the senator from Vermont, gets about 3 in 10. The gap between the two of them has remained pretty constant for the last couple of months. They both picked up some support as other people have dropped out, or in the case of Vice President Joe Biden, decided not to drop in.
As we look through the survey, we see that both California respondents and a national electorate don't feel like things are going in the right direction. They're fairly unsettled about their own economic circumstances, and they're equally unsettled about their personal economic prospects and those of their state and nation going forward.
One of the questions that we asked was whether people think that an economic system that is tilted too much towards the wealthy is a bigger or smaller problem than overregulation that might stifle the free market. By about 6-4, voters nationwide feel that the economic system being tilted more towards the wealthy is the bigger problem. As you might expect, there's a partisan gap here. Democrats feel overwhelmingly that economic unfairness, too much of the economy going to the wealthy, is the bigger problem. Republicans, by a very large margin, feel that overregulation, stifling the free market, is the bigger problem.
We also wanted to get a more specific sense is what affected their mood. What made them excited or what made them worried? Was it economic factors? Was it social and cultural factors? Was it morals and values? And what we found is that Americans and Californians alike, are extremely worried by the state of the economy.
There is here, as with some other questions, a partisan difference. Republicans are much more likely to say that they're worried about the economy. Democrats somewhat less so. There's a very noticeable difference by race and ethnicity, and that influences the partisan gap. Minority voters are much more likely to say that they're hopeful. White voters are much more likely to say that they're worried.
The one thing that California voters were more excited about was the cultural diversity in their communities and in their state and in their country.
Democrats tend to be more hopeful about cultural diversity. Republicans tend to be more worried about it.
But we asked them a more basic question. Did they think that immigration was a net benefit or a net minus to our country? And nationally, voters were somewhat equivocal. But here in California, by overwhelming margins, California voters said that immigrants were a net benefit to our society.